welcome to ListLab. Today, we are counting down 10 ancient artifacts and discoveries that suggest civilization, symbolic culture, and complex human society may be older than traditionally believed. The central question is this: do these ancient discoveries really push back the timeline of civilization, or are later interpretations stretching the evidence too far? Subscribe for more calm investigations into ancient history, lost civilizations, and archaeological mysteries. Then tell me in the comments which entry most challenges the accepted story of the ancient world. Number 10. Yonaguni Monument. Off the coast of Yonaguni Island in Japan, divers reported an underwater formation in 1986 that looks like broad terraces, sharp steps, and flat platforms. It attracted attention because its geometry can appear architectural, especially in photographs and underwater footage, where it resembles the ruins of a lost civilization. Marine geologist Masaaki Kimura has argued that parts of the site were shaped by people and may belong to a submerged settlement from a time when sea levels were lower. Some supporters go further. They suggest that mainstream archaeology avoids the site because it could point to a coastal civilization far older than accepted history. The strongest alternative explanation is geological. Other researchers argue that sandstone can break along natural plains and create straight edges without human work. Even researchers open to human involvement admit that direct archaeological evidence, such as tools, inscriptions, or clearly cut stone blocks, is still limited. What is clear is that a real underwater formation exists, and that specialists disagree about what created it. What remains uncertain is whether Yonaguni is a natural monument, a partly modified landscape, or genuine evidence of an ancient submerged culture. Number 9. Gunung Padang. Gunung Padang in West Java, Indonesia, is a terraced hilltop site built from volcanic stone columns and long regarded as an important ancient place. It gained worldwide attention after a paper published on October 20, 2023, claimed that the site concealed a buried pyramid with construction phases reaching back tens of thousands of years. That claim drew intense interest because it would place monumental building deep in the Ice Age and suggest that advanced culture existed far earlier than the standard timeline of civilization allows. Supporters argued that deep layers beneath the terraces show deliberate shaping. Some treated later criticism as an attempt to dismiss a discovery that could rewrite ancient history. Critics responded that the dating relied on soil samples not securely tied to human construction, which makes the extreme age claims unreliable. On March 18, 2024, the paper was formally retracted because of those dating concerns and the lack of a dependable association with artifacts. What is confirmed is that Gunung Padang is a genuine megalithic site, and that its visible terraces are historically significant. What remains debated is whether deeper layers contain real human construction from a much earlier age, or whether the most dramatic claims go beyond the available evidence. Number 8. Sumerian King List Prism. At the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, a clay prism known as the Sumerian King List records rulers, cities, and reign lengths from ancient Mesopotamia. The prism dates to around 1800 BC and begins with a distant age in which kings are said to have ruled for impossibly long periods before a great flood. It fascinates viewers because it feels like a preserved memory of an older world. Some see it as evidence that the roots of civilization stretch further back than conventional history admits. A more speculative theory treats the earliest section as literal history and argues that the text preserves a hidden chronology of a lost ancient civilization. The strongest scholarly view is more cautious. It holds that the list mixes myth, political messaging, and historical tradition rather than functioning as a modern record. As the text moves closer to better-known rulers, the reign lengths become more realistic, which suggests a blend of legend and fact. What is confirmed is that multiple versions of the king list survive, and that this prism is one of the best preserved examples. What remains uncertain is how much genuine memory may lie behind the earliest names, and whether the opening sections preserve distorted echoes of a much older past. Number 7. Vinca symbol system. Across Neolithic sites linked to the Vinca culture in the Balkans, archaeologists have found pottery and objects marked with small incised signs. These symbols became famous because some writers argued that they represent the earliest writing system in the world, potentially older than the first accepted scripts of Mesopotamia. If that were true, it would mean that symbolic communication and record keeping in prehistoric Europe were far more advanced than traditionally believed. Supporters of the proto-writing idea argue that repeated signs and patterns point to a structured system rather than random marks. Critics respond that the word writing is too strong, and that most archaeologists do not see convincing proof that the symbols recorded spoken language. Even some researchers who favor the idea of a sign system that damaged surfaces and isolated marks make firm conclusions difficult. What is confirmed is that the symbols are real, that they recur across sites, and that they belong to a surprisingly rich symbolic culture. What remains uncertain is whether the Vinca signs were true writing, religious symbols, ownership marks, or something in between that shows early complexity without yet becoming full script. Number 6. Nebra Sky Disk. Near Nebra in Germany, looters illegally uncovered a bronze disc in the summer of 1999. It was decorated with gold symbols of the sky. The Nebra Sky Disk drew intense attention because it is often described as the oldest known concrete representation of astronomical knowledge, with symbols linked to the sun, moon, stars, and horizon arcs. That made it important not only as an ancient artifact, but also as evidence that Bronze Age people may have possessed a more advanced understanding of the heavens than many assume. Some researchers later argued that the disk might actually belong to the Iron Age, which would reduce its importance as an early breakthrough in ancient astronomy. Others have suggested that, because the find was looted, the accepted story of its context should be treated carefully. The strongest evidence for the earlier date comes from studies linking the disk to its find spot and from associated objects dated to around 1600 BC. It is also confirmed that the disk is authentic and that it was modified in stages before burial. What remains debated is its exact purpose, whether it was a ritual object, an astronomical teaching tool, or both, and how far its design really reflects formal knowledge of the ancient sky. Number 5. Shahr-e Sukhteh artificial eye. During excavations at Shahr-e Sukhteh, also known as the Burnt City in Iran, archaeologists found a prosthetic eye placed in the left eye socket of a woman aged about 28 to 32 years. The object dates to between 2900 BC and 2832, which is why it is often described as the earliest known artificial eye. It drew attention because it suggests remarkable craftsmanship, personal identity, and perhaps even early medical or cosmetic practice in one of the ancient world's important urban centers. Some people interpret the find as evidence that advanced body modification and specialized knowledge developed much earlier than most people expect. A more cautious view is that the object may have carried ritual meaning as well as practical use, and that modern observers can overstate its medical significance. The strongest evidence for genuine use is that it was found in place, shaped to imitate the eye, and made with deliberate attention to visible detail. What is confirmed is that Shahr-e Sukhteh was a major Bronze Age settlement on important trade routes, and that the prosthetic eye is a real archaeological discovery. What remains uncertain is exactly how it was attached, how long it was worn, and what this extraordinary object reveals about status, beauty, and technical skill in the early ancient world. Number 4. Khirokitia Settlement. On Cyprus, the Neolithic settlement of Khirokitia preserves the remains of an early farming village with circular houses, walls, and organized domestic space. It attracts attention because it suggests that planned settlement, social cooperation, and stable community life existed far earlier than many people imagine when thinking about the origins of civilization. Some researchers see Khirokitia as evidence that sophisticated village planning and shared labor were already established in the ancient Mediterranean, long before cities appeared. That has led some viewers to argue that the roots of civilization began much earlier and more gradually than the traditional story of sudden urban emergence suggests. A more cautious interpretation is that orderly patterns in a settlement do not necessarily mean formal government or advanced state society. The strongest evidence comes from excavated houses, internal features, burials beneath floors, and repeated building practices across the site. What is confirmed is that Khirokitia was a real and substantial Neolithic settlement, occupied from the 7th to the 5th millennium BC. What remains uncertain is how social authority functioned there, how the settlement was organized in daily life, and whether places like this should be seen as early civilization or as a separate stage of complex culture before the rise of cities. Number 3. Blombos Cave Engravings. At Blombos Cave in South Africa, archaeologists recovered a silkrete flake bearing a deliberate cross-hatched drawing made with red ochre. A study published in 2018 reported that the drawing comes from layers dated to around 73,000 years ago, making it one of the oldest known examples of intentional graphic expression. It gained major attention because it suggests that symbolic thought, abstract design, and complex behavior existed far earlier than the timelines people usually associate with advanced culture. Some have argued that such markings are too simple to count as meaningful evidence for a deep symbolic tradition and may only be casual marks. The strongest evidence says otherwise because microscopic and chemical analysis showed that the pigment was intentionally applied by human hand. The wider site also includes shell beads and engraved ochre pieces, making the drawing part of a broader pattern of symbolic behavior. What is confirmed is that early Homo sapiens were capable of abstract expression long before farming, cities, or written language. What remains uncertain is what the design meant, whether it carried shared cultural meaning, and how close such ancient symbolism comes to the mental foundations of later civilization. Number 2. Shigir Idol. In the Ural region of Russia, gold prospectors uncovered a carved wooden figure from a peat bog on January 24, 1890. It is now known as the Shigir Idol. Modern dating places the sculpture at roughly 11,500 years old, or possibly older, making it one of the oldest monumental wooden artworks ever found. It caused such interest because it suggests that hunter-gatherer societies at the end of the Ice Age were capable of large-scale symbolic art and complex shared belief. Some people see the idol as evidence that sophisticated spiritual culture developed much earlier than standard ideas about primitive pre-farming communities would suggest. Critics have questioned whether contamination or conservation methods could have distorted the dating, since such an early age has major implications for ancient history. Later research addressed those concerns and supported the early date with repeated testing and close analysis of the wood. What is confirmed is that the idol is real, that it once stood much taller, and that it belongs to a very early prehistoric world. What remains uncertain is what its carved faces and patterns meant, who made it, and whether it reflects a lost symbolic tradition far richer than historians once imagined. Number 1. Göbekli Tepe. In southeastern Turkey, Göbekli Tepe contains monumental stone enclosures built by hunter-gatherers between 9600 BC and 8200 BC. It became one of the most important archaeological discoveries in the world because it suggests that organized ritual, symbolic culture, and large communal building projects existed before full farming society. That directly challenges the older idea that agriculture had to come first, and that only settled farming communities could create monumental architecture. Some researchers describe the site as evidence that belief and ritual may have helped drive the rise of civilization rather than simply following it. More dramatic theories claim that Gobekli Tepe proves the existence of a lost advanced civilization whose role has been ignored or downplayed. The strongest evidence still supports an early Neolithic date based on radiocarbon testing, excavation results, carved pillars, animal imagery, and traces of intentional backfilling. What is confirmed is that the site is genuine, exceptionally early, and central to debates about the origins of civilization, religion, and social complexity. What remains uncertain is its exact purpose, how the builders organized themselves, and whether Gobekli Tepe represents the beginning of civilization as we know it. It may instead reflect a different path of ancient human complexity that history is only beginning to understand. Taken together, these ancient artifacts and archaeological discoveries show that the story of civilization may be older, deeper, and more complex than the traditional timeline suggests. Which entry did you find most interesting, and which ancient mystery do you think most challenges accepted? If you enjoyed this countdown on ancient civilizations, lost history, and forgotten discoveries, like the video, subscribe to ListLab, and share your thoughts in the comments.